Hi, I'm Josh, and I'm going to be looking through a VCE English Language AC practice today on an informal spoken text. The English language exam is tomorrow, and one of my students asked me to have a look at one of their ACs, so I'm going to look through it. I think there's a high chance that the AC tomorrow is going to be on an informal spoken text purely because last year it was on a formal written text, and they like to alternate sometimes, but uh, that's obviously not a definite. So you should be prepared for any type of text that can come. But I'm just going to do this completely impromptu. I've never read this text before. I haven't read the writing at all. I'm just going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes just reading through the article, highlighting some key points, and using those to, I think, have a read of the AC. So let's get this done. A bit about myself, I guess. I'm Josh. I scored a raw 47 in VCE English Language in 2020 and a perfect 8R as well. And I thoroughly enjoy teaching English language because I think it's such a useful language, useful subject to, because I think it's such a useful subject. Cool. Catherine and Anita so firstly, we look at the background box. Catherine and Anita are at a local writers' festival. Catherine is working at a bookstore and is selling books that Anita has selected. Okay, fair. The background box is quite important, quite brief here. It looks like a made-up text. Let's have a read of it. Remember, Catherine here is working at a bookstore. Okay, sure. Are you waiting to be served? Yep, just how do you want to pay for this? Okay. There's a bit of a overlapping here. Sounds a little rude, but we'll keep reading. Allegro, P is soft voice, piano. Okay, how did you want to pay for those? On my card. Yep, sure. Okay. How was the drive in? I had 3 hours from Geelong just arrived. You're joking. The traffic, I've never seen it like this. I've heard it's shocking. Yeah, and we've had a lot of people coming in. I think, well, obviously, yeah, because the traffic 3 hours. Yeah, because I didn't have to come over the west gate. I did a. Uh, yeah, I sort of went around. Sorry, I keep forgetting. C is Catherine, the the store person. But it was everyone was doing that too. Well, everyone's doing that too, haha, aren't they? And everyone's going slow and yeah. Well, yeah. I mean it's really pouring, so well you're here now, which is good. Yes. So I just did well. I'm going to be late. Well, I'm just have to miss the first session. Yeah, look, I think a lot of people. I mean, it's not just usually wet. Were you here yesterday, or is it just? Yes, yeah. How did you find yesterday? Well, I got here in the 2 hours expected it would take. Yeah, yep. And actually, I thought, oh, this is a breeze. I thought I'd come along Barclay Street, and yep, Barclay Street was deserted, and at 40 k's. All right, you're actually going faster than most cars going over to Westgate. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's $146 for that. Thank you. On credit, thank you. Yeah, sorry, you were saying it was a good run. Yeah, I thought I'm gonna do that again today. Did you put that on savings? Did you? No, it's credit. You can put a pin in or you can sign, whatever you. I'll sign, please. Yep, yep. There's a pen there for you. I'm not ready to, sorry. That's all right, that's fine. I know I should get technology. Well, it's normally your same pin as your savings, so when well, that's what mine is. I just put in the same pin that I use at the ATM. And oh, okay, if I did EPTOS, if I put in the same pin. So yeah, I'll sign this, sign that one. I mean, check with your bank, but often that's what it is. Okay. And I just haven't got around to, I just tried it one day. Actually, I'll staple it for you here. Thank you. That's everything. That's your invoice. Enjoy it. Thanks so much. Thanks, Catherine. It's a pleasure. Okay, fair enough. Spoken text seems, it doesn't seem like I thought at the beginning, uh, this seemed a little bit rude, but no, the conversation seems completely fine. Uh, there is a lot of overlapping, a lot of back channeling, a lot of conversation chit chat, as well as some conversation about, I guess, A trying to, or C trying to help A to uh, be able to pay with a pin that is potentially unknown. Cool. So I'll just recap for a informal spoken text. The structure that I like to use is register, social purpose, and conversational discourse strategies. You kind of put prosodics scattered across, but a lot of that would be in conversational strategies because they do help with enabling a very smooth conversation. But there we are. Let's have a read of this text. I'm just going to make this smaller. Oop. Okay, here we go. The following spoken text is a conversation between Catherine and Anita during the purchase of books by Anita at the bookstore, running a local writers' festival. Okay, the first thing I'll say about that sentence is there's a little bit of linguistic ambiguity during it's a bit of a long run-on sentence, I guess. You just want to be as clear-cut as you can, because even though I know what's going on, there are phrases that describe, like during a local writers' festival, obviously, is the context here, but it's a little bit off, I feel, because the sentence is so long. The interlocutors adopt a primarily informal register to assist them to achieve their social purpose of conversing to each other, catering to each other's positive face needs, to build rapport as well to aid Catherine to sell the books to Anita. Okay, yeah, they do primarily use a informal register. The last section is a little bit less informal because they're not having chit chat anymore. They're actually trying to achieve a function or transactional function. So often you, perhaps if you do English language, you might have learnt of the Thorn functions. Transactional is one of them, trying to get a task done, and that's what happens primarily towards the end of the text. But yeah, throughout it's primarily informal to assist the social purpose of catering to each other's positive facing, yeah, to build rapport, just to have chit chat. Obviously, at a writers' festival especially, you don't want to just be like buying a book and then leaving a store. It's a celebration of culture, a celebration of writing, and they potentially have they potentially know each other. They do know each other because they probably know each other because I think A says thanks Catherine here, so the name wasn't mentioned at the beginning. Otherwise, you've covered cramp. You have the context. Cramp is just the framework for an introduction. Context, register is informal. Audience is each other. The mode is a conversation. It's spoken, and the purpose is to build rapport and as well as to aid Catherine to sell the books. It's more about helping Anita to use a valid payment method, I guess. But that kind of touches upon that. Cool. Very apt introduction. Body paragraph 1. The register of the text is predominantly informal. Your writing's a little bit messy. I mean, it's not messy. It's a little bit like I know you obviously would have done this in a time, but and it's a little bit late now. But I'd encourage all students to maybe write a little slower. It might be getting a little bit hard to read, although it's still better than a lot of people, so I guess it's fine. It's predominantly informal to assist the interlocutors to achieve there should be a 2 here, to achieve their primary social purpose and emphatic function of building rapport, and this is reflected through the frequent use of non-standard English features. Yes, the primary social purpose, I guess, I think the primary social purpose is to fulfill the transaction, to be honest. I feel like the building rapport part is a bit of a secondary one, even though it happens. There's quite a bit of evidence that they do try to do the transaction. Are you waiting to be served? These adjacency pairs can be used to demonstrate that, especially as well as at the end, the use of jargon in relation to FPOS, in relation to PIN, invoice here. Having said that, that's still fine. I feel like make your social purpose a little bit more specific and accurate. Or building rapport, and this is reflected through the frequent use of non-standard figures. Yeah, Usually I like just writing a first sentence as like just a generic sentence, but you can have some evidence here as well. Is reflected through the frequent use of non-standard English features. Cool. I guess since you're trying to talk about register, it's acceptable to mention the purpose of building rapport because the the informal features in here primarily help the purpose of building rapport rather than of doing a transaction. For example, by employing shortenings, let's put some meta language there, such as cause instead of because in line 51. Yep, 51. Is that 51? Oops, no. Sorry. CA2, line 18. Cause. Oh no, that's right. Cause instead of because and kilometers instead of kilometers, as well as colloquialisms such as yeah and yep instead of the standard yep, contribute towards the lower register due to their non-standard orthography. Yeah, so it is definitely non-standard orthography. I will just tell you that this is a spoken text, right? And orthography is talking about spelling, really. So when you do a spoken text, you don't really have spelling because you're speaking it. Cause is definitely a reduction. I think shortenings and reductions are interchangeable, but shortenings uh, is more for written text, I think, and reductions are more speech. But cause is definitely a non-standard pronunciation or an elision. There's elision of the B sound. Because instead of because, kilometers instead of, so they said Ks instead of kilometers. Yep. Colloquial. Okay. So I think the important thing in this section here is you've kind of done a list of features that are non-standard and that lower the register, which is absolutely valid because you can't really go too much into that. It's like I always say, don't try not to do shopping lists, but there's not too much to talk about in relation to them. They're just a very casual way of speaking. But just be careful about saying orthography because it's not orthography. It's they're speaking. But they do contribute to a lower register. Lower register. Is there colors here? Surely there's some other color I could use. Doesn't matter. So, where's my pen? Oops. Alright, so this is so annoying. Where is my color? Oh, there is color. Great. Surely this is. Oh, this is text. Close. Okay. So it's important, I think, to note that a lower register isn't necessarily a good way to uh, describe a register. I just say a more informal register. Even though lower register, yeah, I guess it's okay, but I just want to be specific. But otherwise, those definitely contribute to a more informal register. Good job there. The presence of laughter in line 26. Yeah, well, everyone's doing that. Ha ha ha. Uh, after the staring, after they're sharing their, after, sorry, after the sharing their shared, after the sharing shared, their shared relatable. I'm not really sure what you're saying there, but after they're sharing their shared relatable and humorous um and reflects the informal register of the conversation. Okay, yeah, laughter definitely reflects informality, although you still have to look at the context. But in this case, they're just joking around. I think I sort of went around, but everyone was doing that. Everyone was doing that too. Uh, yeah, so there's some sort of uh, inference there, I guess, that it takes forever to go to uh, this place around the Westgate freeway or bridge, bridge in this case. Uh, there's some sort of shared inference, I guess, that it takes forever perhaps to go over to Westgate, especially during peak hour. I'm not really sure. I guess, yeah, no, that's what the laughter does as well, because there's that shared understanding that the Westgate Bridge is horrible. Uh, just explain that and expand on that, I think. I feel like a lot of this, what you've written here, is very generic, and it's always useful to look at the specific context. Why was the laughter used? In order to demonstrate to your examiner that you're not just, I guess, bringing in something generic from your own brain, but rather analyzing the text in front of you. By using such informal features to create such a casual register, enables that interlocutors to create. Yeah, so there's some grammar here. You don't need this. By enables the interlocutors to create a conversational tone and relaxed atmosphere, hence supporting them to be comfortable and reduce the social distance to build rapport. Yeah, I feel like your paragraph is a little bit short. You can talk about some of the more formal features in this, such as the jargon that they use on the last page in relation to PIN and ATM and FPOS. Other features that relate to informality, perhaps, might be. Can you hear the piano in my background? I'm sorry, my sister's playing piano. I mean, it's really pouring, so. Okay, one thing I would say that isn't really informal, but you could potentially put in this paragraph, because as I keep saying, paragraphs are just for a way to categorizing your analysis rather than providing an argument, because this is an essay, not a this is a commentary, not an essay. You could put in non-fluency features. There's quite a bit in here. For example, repetition here. I mean, it's just usually wet. Where you hear, well, I got in here to 2 hours I expected it would take. Yeah, and actually I thought, oh, this is a breeze. Okay, so something like this is a breeze. That is also a figurative language. It's a metaphor in a way, because it's not actually a breeze. It's like a breeze, but because there's no like in there, it's not a simile. It's a metaphor. So you're being a little bit descriptive. You're kind of just building that imagery, and you're allowing the I guess you're allowing a more colloquial tone. You're conveying a more colloquial tone, perhaps because you're not being exactly literal. You're describing things by using something that is a little bit more interesting than describing what is happening literally. Sorry, it was a good run. I thought I'm going to do it again. Okay, cool. But apart from that, there are quite a few informal features in here. I think you've covered the main ones: laughter and colloquialisms. Just make sure that to link them directly to your purpose, as you've done okay here. Let's move on. I'll do some more general statements later. Furthermore, the interlocutors also employ an amalgamation of several stylistic and discourse features to assist them to adhere to, there should be a to here, the social purpose and emphatic function of building rapport. Okay, again, a very long sentence, I feel. Furthermore is good. I always encourage linking words between paragraphs, but I feel like it's not necessary to have such a long topic sentence, especially. I mean, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just feel like it sounds like you're being a little bit pretentious if your essay isn't. If there's, for example, if there's a grammar mistake here, like there is. Oh no, there isn't a grammar mistake. My bad. This isn't adhere. This is achieve their social purpose. Now that's fine. I still would stick with a shorter topic sentence. For example, by posing interrogatives towards each other, such as, now was the drive in? How was the drive in? Line 6. Yep. How was the drive in? Line 6. And how did you find yesterday? Line 43. reflects Catherine's occupation as a bookseller by demonstrating how she uses questions to engage Anita, the consumer, in the conversation and to pass the floor to reduce social distance with her and make her feel comfortable. Okay, again, it's a really long sentence. You don't need, like, the thing about English language, I feel like, is have idea, connect it to analysis. Why was it used? You don't need to put so much into one sentence because it's difficult to comprehend. Like, I'm finding it difficult to comprehend this. What you say about interrogatives is absolutely correct. Using interrogatives is a way to pass the floor. It's a way to achieve the purpose of engaging with the customer. Engaging with the customer in order to complete the transaction of the of getting the book sold. So that's part of the social purpose. So you can mention that explicitly here. Reflects occupation as a news seller by demonstrating how bookseller, sorry, actually, to engage. Okay, how did you find yesterday? How did you find yesterday? Yeah, okay, so how did you find yesterday? And how was the drive-in are both examples of building rapport. It's a phatic function. It doesn't have any particular purpose other than to socialize. Yeah, make her feel comfortable. Again, that's correct. Making her feel comfortable. It's not as like transactional. It's not as frozen. It's more of a like, even though someone's selling someone something and trying to make money, it's more of a friendly atmosphere. It's more of a like a, I guess, closing the distance, which is what you've said here. So what you said here is correct. It would have been nice to have some interrogatives on the primary social purpose of doing the transaction as well. Are you waiting to be served, for example, or like when they ask about payments, or when they say, "Thanks so much, thanks, Catherine." Openings and closings. I usually put them at the beginning of my social purpose paragraph. Openings and closings are quite important for informal spoken text because they reflect the context. It's a especially since this, as I keep repeating, but it is a transaction. It's a short passage which happens to get a task done. So you have an opening and closing, which is quite natural. For example, sorry, I've read that. Where am I? Okay, yeah, again, it was a very long sentence here. Similarly, the use of personal pronouns such as I in line 19 and 21, I sort of went round the other way. Yeah, because I didn't come over the Westgate. I did when sharing the anecdote of the experience traveling to the store, as well as the presence of inference such as Westgate and Berkeley Street, demonstrate how both Anita and Catherine build rapport and solidarity. There's two ands here, and solidarity with each other by being personal and sharing common experiences with each other. Okay, again, it's quite a long sentence, but I'll break it down into bits. Similarly, the use of personal pronouns such as I definitely enable her to tell an anecdote. That's how you tell anecdotes, because they're stories about yourself. And it's definitely an example of inference. I will just say that you don't really say presence of inference. Inference isn't a term describing, isn't a meta-language term for describing a term per se. It's more like the audience will use inference in order to infer a meaning from something. For example, when they say Westgate, it will be Catherine here, the store person, can infer that the based on her own experience that the Westgate is a very busy and slow bridge to drive across. And Barclay Street, uh, Barclay Street. Yeah, okay. So Barclay Street again has to be understood by both Catherine and Anita because they haven't explained what Barclay Street is. It's presumably one of the roads close to the store, I think. I've forgotten the exact context of the text now because this is my first time reading it. Demonstrate, but that's fine. Demonstrate. Yeah, so just make sure you explain that use of inference as well, not just list it out. Why does it build the social purpose? It continues to build rapport and solidarity, share personal and sharing common experiences with each other. Yeah, absolutely. So it both enables her to tell her anecdote as well as to build rapport and have a shared experience and to fulfill the phatic function. Great. By also employing positive politeness strategies, such as thank you so much by Catherine in line 49 and thank you by Anita in line 96. You also, make sure you don't, make sure you fix up the grammar here. You need a pronoun here. By employing something, they demonstrate or she demonstrates how they both use such strategies to adhere to overt norms and hence cater to each other's positive face needs by enabling to feel in something and respected. Okay, yeah. I feel like you're being a little bit general here. It is correct that it does cater to overt norms. I mean, overt norms is about like we have overt prestige and covert prestige. Obviously, overt prestige is where you use language that is standard, that is respected by everyone. I don't think necessarily this demonstrates a connection to overt or covert norms, or I wouldn't use those phrases at least. I would just say cater to each other's positive face needs, enable a transaction to occur. It's the closing, so it's a convention of the text type. It's a convention of a conversation that is like a phatic conversation here, as is the case. So just make sure you link it to the context. I think context is often neglected. Thank you so much. Okay, but otherwise, thank you is a good example of catering to positive face needs because you want to be respectful. Being respectful is all about being polite is one element of it is being respectful. Another element, like you don't have to be respectful to cater to positive face needs. For example, catering to positive face needs could be achieved by like if you're super close with someone, then you might swear at them or kind of use swear words with them. Even though it might seem rude sometimes, if you're super close with each other, there's that shared understanding that you're fine with using those words. So again, you have to look at the context to see whether a term is positive face needs, catering to it, or threatening it. But what you've said here is valid as well. Cool. So you've covered both social purposes, which is good. You need to cover both social purposes. Whatever the text is. I mean, there's not always going to be two social purposes, but there are two clear social purposes in this text here. It would have been nice to mention the trouble with the payments using jargon here, using FPOS jargon, using ATM, using PIN is something that you could have mentioned as well as context. How did you find yesterday? So obviously she knew that she was there yesterday as well. She knows that she's a writer. They have that shared connection. They have that prior shared common experience. So you could have brought that in as well. Final paragraph. The interlocutors also utilize multiple discourse features and strategies throughout the conversation. Yes, strategies throughout the conversation. That's correct. That's fine. For example, by using cooperative conversational strategies such as interrogative tags. Line 20, I'll just check that. Line 27, is that? Aren't they? Minimal responses such as, yeah, it feels like you're having a list here. You can analyze each of those in turn. Instead of having quantity, I'd prefer if you had each feature analyzed, such as aren't they? So passing the floor, you're engaging the other person in conversation, making it a two-way conversation rather than you're talking at them. Minimal responses such as yep, line 24, but it was still yep. Yeah, so again, showing encouragement, that's what minimal response is about. And yeah, such as overlapping, cooperative overlapping, or just and yes in lines 41 and 42. Well, were you here yesterday, or is it just yes, yeah, okay. So demonstrate as forms of back-channeling, portray how the interlocutors, the spelling mistake here, maintain a cohesive and coherent conversation by demonstrating they are listening to each other and catering to each other's positive face needs. Yes, that is correct, but as I said just then, I'd like you to draw each one out. Look at what specifically is being achieved there. Uh, you don't have to list all the features. If you just analyze some of them in a little bit more depth, then that's fine. It's not even analyzing sometimes, it's just explaining it as well. Uh, the conversation is also managed by utilizing. Okay, I know why you said cohesive and coherent here. Usually we say written texts are cohesive and coherent, so I just avoid that bringing that in, but there's nothing majorly wrong with it. The conversation is also managed by utilizing positive face needs. Utilizing following intonation, line 459 interrogatives, line 6 to pass the floor throughout the conversation. The use of adjacency pairs in lines 100, 101. Thanks, Catherine. It's a pleasure. Yeah, that's an adjacency pair. Also enable the conversation to be cooperative. The use of prosodic features enable the interlocutors to be more expressive throughout the conversation. Yeah, so adjacency pairs, I know you've just said one sentence about adjacency pairs here. A more interesting adjacency pair would probably have been like a question and answer. Again, adjacency pairs just help them to engage each other in conversation, so that's a conversational strategy. The use of prosodic features enable the interlocutors to be more expressive. More expressive, yeah. For example, by lengthening the sound on specific lexemes such as 3 and loud volume in the utterance LL, 3 nouns in line 18. $3 hours. Yeah, so low voice, L is low. Slow, no, it's slow. Largo, I think. Lento. Slow pace utterance cause the traffic 3 hours. Yeah, so lengthening your sound to demonstrate how long they spent in traffic. That's absolutely correct. I know you might have been running out of time here, but it would have been nice to bring in quite a few more prosodic features in, because prosodic features are very interesting to talk about. 3 hours is a good example because the use of lento is very obvious. Are you waiting to be served? Yep. It's allegro. One reason for this is potentially because it's completely like she says it all the time. Are you waiting to be served? It's very conventional. It adheres to the text. It adheres to her role as the shopkeeper here. So there's no really reason, like, and I need to know what she's going to say anyway. So there's no really major reason for like it's not impromptu basically. Yep, just the how do you okay on my card? Yep, sure, okay. So overlapping speech, I reckon you could have talked about that. Overlapping speech is not rude usually, especially since this is not a rude conversation. It's not rude. It's just supporting each other. It's a natural feature of a text, of a spoken text. So spoken text, remember, you should talk about spontaneous features. You should talk about non-fluency features and overlapping. Those are natural results or inclinations within spoken texts. And that would have been nice to bring in somewhere in this paragraph. Another prosodic feature you could have talked about stress, just something like that's your invoice. The the upwards inflection here, the high, I don't know what, like use whatever the legend says. Rising pitch, the rising pitch here, that's your invoice holding the floor. Rising pitch holds the floor. But yeah, cool. So overall, good efforts. The exam's tomorrow, so good luck. And you can't really change much now, but I would say here, I'd say some advice for tomorrow is that you've covered the paragraphs well, which means that you've structured it well. You have good features in each paragraph. Again, the analysis can be a bit stronger by linking it specifically to the text, the context. Why was it used? How does it help them achieve their purposes, as well as identifying the two main purposes and balancing them out, not focusing entirely on one purpose in your AC and not focusing entirely on the other purpose in your AC. Finding a broader range of example, if there are discourse particles here such as well, that would have been nice to bring in because you want to bring in a range of features to demonstrate to examine that you know everything. So you know discourse particles, you know prosodic features, you know adjacency pairs and overlapping. So those are some key things that I feel like you've missed. Again, focusing on the social purpose of the FPOS I think is very important here, because it is a whole page in the text, and it does demonstrate the primary social purpose of it being a transactional piece. All this chit chat is also good, and you've covered that well. But I would just bring in a little bit more. It's a little bit on the short side, I feel, especially since your writing is big. I mean, it's not big. I mean, there are less words on a line than, like, you have larger spaces between your words. So I would just try to write a little bit faster. But again, I'm going to say quantity is not as important as just having good quality. Have you talked about face needs? You have talked about face needs, about the relationship between them. Yeah, you talk about building rapport all the time. Have you talked about their identity? You could have talked about identity as a writer, identity as a Melburnian, through inference, for example, Westgate. Identity as someone who doesn't know how FPOS works, potentially. Quite a few there. So you could have brought those in as well. But otherwise, since your exam is tomorrow, I don't recommend I'd recommend just having a good chill night, and good luck for your exam tomorrow. That's all I have to say.